Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Greg Roque.
Jay, it's an honor to be here to talk crap about movies.
Dude, I'm so glad to have you. I had no idea how deep your love and knowledge of movies goes, and then you challenged me to a movie trivia contest that we still haven't been able to wrangle together. But rest assured, it'll happen. You'll probably kick my ass. But
so I like how you underestimated my knowledge of film, and then you were like, it's just an easy win against a disabled kid. I'm sure that's the only way you won in sports in high school, right?
Exactly. Listen, I'm going to take my dunks wherever I can, and that's mostly against the wheelchair basketball team. You came to me. You wanted to talk about. You brought up a handful of movies when we wanted to talk about doing an episode, but the one that stuck out the most to me, and the one you seemed to be most excited about, was God's Not Dead.
That is correct, and this is a movie that it is like the room of Christian movies. You know, it's something that is so campy and like it's a propaganda film, but it's not good propaganda, and I can't wait to dive into it with you.
Dude, this movie, I remember when it came out. It was 2014 American Christian drama film.
We had a Muslim president, so there was a need to make a Christian movie.
Exactly, and I remember I had watched at my mom's urging. I had watched 2016 Obama's America.
The Dinesh D'Souza classic.
Oh yeah, classic Dinesh. And I remember, because to some degree I do get. Whenever I visit my family in particular, they got Fox News running all the time. So I'll catch the various sort of themes and messages that get brought up in movies like this of the sort of persecution of Christians in America. And, this is a minority. Everybody hates Christians in America. And that's the kind of message of the movie. It's a big movie about Christianity being persecuted and Christians being a minority intellectually. And I remember this movie coming out and it being a huge box office surprise, and everyone was like, oh, well, there you go. This is it. Christians still got a foothold in America. And it had the fucking Duck Dynasty guy cameoing in it. And it was just so weird, but I never had the desire to see it. And I want to know what your experience watching it for the very first time was like. Did you seek it out? Were you still deep in religion at that point, or what was your experience like watching this for the first time?
Well, I mean, I'm not a particularly religious person, but the thing is, I'm fascinated with Christian cinema because every year you can look at the top independent films, and throughout that list, there'll be self-funded evangelical films, sprinkled throughout that list. There was that classic Firestarter with Kirk Cameron. Whatever it was, I forget. And, Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, he has a whole media empire. Mm-hmm. And to me, we live in, well, I mean, this is 2014, but we live in an age where everything is self-aware. We're all skeptics and everything's tinged with irony. So it's hard to find true campiness now in films because everything is they'll tell a corny joke and then they'll wink at the camera and it ruins the magic. But in 2021 or 2014, whatever, to still have unwavering, unshakable convictions, I mean, that's where you get the greatest source of comedy. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's you actually believe in something. What the hell's wrong with you?
Right. Well, because that's the thing is the belief that's so strong causes people to be, if you're not watching them and you don't understand where they're coming from, everybody else is just two-dimensional, horrifying demons to you, which is what happens to every single character in God's Not Dead. I mean, the plot of the God's Not Dead even though there's like 4 subplots, which it's way too cluttered. They don't need all this stuff in this movie about like the preacher who has like a magical black man missionary
who can start
friend.
cars after he prays.
Right. We don't.
It's like Magnolia. It's like Magnolia if like PTA didn't like write any character development, real plot, but just focused on the plague. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, instead of having Tom Cruise yelling about taming the pussy and taming the cunt, you have the newsboys praying and Willie Robertson saying, "Hey, text everybody you know God's not dead."
Yeah. I love that the annoying, like this whole movie is an annoying message that God's not dead, and it ends with an annoying message to annoy your friends by messaging them, "Hey, God's not dead." It's like you could have just like I don't know, like got some internet ads. You know, you didn't have to make a whole movie about this.
I remember thinking at the very beginning of this movie because it's the plot of the movie seems very simple. It's a guy, freshman in college, goes to his philosophy class, and he's obviously a Christian kid. He's wearing the cross around his neck. He's got the Newsboys t-shirt, and his professor says, "All right, you got to say God's not dead and sign this piece of paper that says God's not dead, and that way we can get started on our philosophy class, so that way you can look at things objectively." And he just whinges over it and sits there for like 5 minutes, just like biting his lip and looking super sad, and he can't do it. So his professor says, "All right, you got to prove that God exists, or else you're going to fail this class." And his life spirals out of control.
Even what I love is you forgot to mention that before he actually takes the class, he has to sign up, and the counselor like sees his cross, and he's like, "Oh, you're a Christian?" He's like, "Yeah." "Oh, this professor hates Christians." And I like how this university has this big open secret that a professor will fail any Christian, and he hasn't been written up for it.
Yeah,
so, they're all communist, godless liberals over at this campus. So they God forbid you bring God into school. And what I hate too is like again I noticed more contradictions because Kevin Sorbo, aka 90s Hercules, is the professor. And when he's listing all the famous philosophers who are atheists, I was a philosophy minor, and I was like, "You're mispronouncing most of those names, first of all." So you didn't read any of those guys. But I hate how he says like, "Oh, this isn't going to be an easy class. This is going to be hard. You have to do university level work." And then the first assignment is, "Hey, write God is dead, and I'll give you an A for like a third of the class."
That's
like, what the?
They don't even go over the syllabus. He just walks in. This is what I mean. This is okay. A movie. There's a lot of problems with this movie. One of the big problems, not even from like a religious or political propagandist standpoint, is just that it's so full of the absolute most dog shit tropes of like, oh, the college class starts in the first class. The professor comes walking in and he's all cool. No, you go over the fucking syllabus for the first class and nothing of substance happens. All right, and then you've got the bitchy girlfriend who's like, "Oh, well, I should have listened to what my mom said about you." All right, well, and then she's like, "If you don't listen to what I'm saying, then you're not even in this relationship. I've planned it all out for 50 years," and it's just full of so many of like the basic level. It feels like the guy who wrote this movie, or the two people, Chuck Konzelman and Carrie Solomon. They took a punch bowl full of like lists from tvtropes.com and just plucked things out at random. They're like, "All right, cool, we're going to put this. Oh, wait, what do we name our main guy, our villain? What hotel are we staying at? Right? The Radisson. Okay, let's give him, it's Professor Radisson."
Yeah, the main character's name is Josh Wheaton. And it sounds like, oh man, like it sounds like what your friend who isn't into movies. Hey, who's the guy directed Avengers? Oh, Josh Whedon.
Yeah.
No, it's Josh Whedon. Oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake. I'm not a big movie guy.
So I want to know, this movie, it's got a lot of overarching big plot lines, branching off of our main man, Josh Wheaton, and his trying to prove that God is real and God is not dead. I want to know where you land on, let's try, before we get into anything else, let's talk about that whole plot line. Let's talk about how both Josh and Professor Radisson are two of the worst lead characters in cinematic history.
I mean, they really are. Like their whole, like Radisson hates God, like with a passion. It's not even like, oh, I just don't think there's any proof for God. It's like, no, I will destroy Christianity and, everyone who gets on their knees and prays. And meanwhile, Josh is like that one, like freshman who's like, hey, I'm smarter than everybody here because I read this one book even before I crack open the syllabus. Right. And it's like they're just really empty. Like you said, tropes, but there's just empty, hollow characters. Like it's like it's not even subtle or nuanced, and that's like the thing that makes it such a chore to watch, but also a pleasure, because again, you're dealing with straw men on both extremes. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't know if you actually want to get into the debate because the arguments themselves are so dumb. Like just for
from the standpoint of, I mean, I'm no philosophy head. You have much more in that department, but I've heard these sorts of arguments from the Christian side before. Having gone, I went to church for a long time and I worked at a Christian summer camp for a long time, and I remember like one time I was of the mind when I was getting to my later years as a camp counselor, I was like, I don't know if I need to teach these kids like Christian doctrine if I don't totally buy into it. So I'm just going to teach them like good morals and stuff like that. And maybe just like don't be a shithead to people as you grow older and become a teenager and a young adult. And I remember some guy came up to me one time and he was like, hey, at your nightly devotion, you really should be reading out of the Bible. Like, you're not doing enough Christianity here with these kids. And I'm just like, why do we need to get into this? Like, why is this the thing? And his whole subset of arguments were, especially when he gets to the point of like, well, if there's no Christianity, if there's no God, then how come there are morals? Is so stupid and so, again, just paper thin, garbage, emptiness there. It made me so mad. Like, he's absolutely right. We shouldn't be listening to a college freshman make these arguments. There's no reason for us to buy into anything that he's selling.
He even acknowledges that in the movie. He's like, oh, you're a college freshman who hasn't done any reading. You think you're smarter than these guys?
Says that so many times.
Yeah, and then, but the real kicker is that he even says, look, I don't like. The professor straight up tells him, I don't care if you believe in God. Just do this assignment. You can go to your dorm and pray, whatever. Let's just get this over with. The guy's like, no, I'm not going to take the easy A. I'm going to set the record straight. And then I'm going to convince and indoctrinate all these other dumb college freshmen so they all turn against you.
Yeah, the least believable college freshman of all time, by the way. No college freshman is going to take a shot at taking an easy A and just signing a piece of paper that doesn't matter and actively do something to avoid that. Like, no one's going to do more work in college if they don't have to.
Yeah, this dude's like sleeping in the library, like, and he's also like borrowing books on like theoretical physics. It's like why go to college in the first place if you can master years of theoretical physics in a night? You Christian genius.
That's so fucking stupid. So he makes a series of arguments because good old Kevin Sorbo, even though at every step of the way he's like grabbing the kid by the scruff of the neck and being like, "I'm gonna ruin you in front of this class. You're never gonna get anyone to believe you." He still like soldiers on, and he's going on and saying like, why? How can the world have existed? How can the Big Bang Theory happen if it didn't happen the way that God said it happened in Genesis, right? Or in any of these dumb arguments where he even admits, he's like, I'm not proving anything. There's nothing being proven here.
Exactly. No, it's like this whole thing, like they both acknowledge it's a waste of time, and yet they're still going through it. And like, that's kind of how I feel. It's like, because he's even like, oh, life would be meaningless. It's all about faith or not faith. I'm like, yes, that's the whole point. It's you can decide for yourself. It's fine. Like I get it. But they gotta attack my deceased boy in a wheelchair, Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
I like how they threw that in like, oh, he says this, but that's a bias. Like, oh, he probably hates God because he's all weird looking in the chair and shit.
Yeah. Do you think he was probably a fan of God? I bet not. That's basically what they say about it. It's crazy, man. And
look at this handsome Christian scientist who loves God. He's right.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't help matters that Josh, every step of the way, is, and really only like one step of the way, because there's like two other characters that ever interact with him, and only one of them is like, hey, you're kind of being a fucking idiot here, dude. And it's his girlfriend, who is one of the smartest characters in the whole movie, because she, I think, is clearly still a Christian as a character. But she's like, yeah, just sign the paper and don't worry. Don't like waste all this time on this garbage assignment. Just get the A.
Yeah, it's like you want to go to law school, do this, get good grades, and then like you can be a Christian lawyer later and do whatever you want. Like, who cares about this? And the worst part was that, like, so he's going balls deep in this like intellectual beatdown with his professor. And like, there's that scene where she's like, "Oh, what day is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's our anniversary." And instead of saying how much he loves her, spending time with her, that whole anniversary is just like, "Hey, I'm going to destroy this professor in a debate," And then it's like completely ignoring her. I'm like, "You're not a good dude." like you couldn't even set this aside on like your anniversary.
Just like take the time, dude. And also, a thing that really, really bugged me was multiple times in arguing with her about whether or not he should stand up to his professor and do the thing that he thinks God is telling him to do. He's like, you are saying I shouldn't do it, and my parents don't think I should do it. We never hear from his parents. We never see a phone call or a FaceTime with them at all where they're like, yeah, son, you're kind of you're committing academic suicide, which is a thing that's said multiple times. And I'm surprised we don't have the moment of his parents being like, yeah, maybe cool it with the Jesus stuff a little bit, kid. It's going to be okay.
They're probably paying for his college too. It's like, you little shit, I'm paying $40,000 a year for you to go to this private school and you want to blow it all like stupid Christ. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, private liberal arts education. This is not easy to come by. Oh my God, man. So, but that's like the main thing. And everybody, here's the thing, is like, like I said, when you have nothing but like pure belief and pure faith, it makes everybody look two-dimensional. And everybody in this character, or every character in this movie, is either cartoonishly evil, like mustache twirling, tying someone to the train tracks evil, or grossly incompetent. And the sort of extension of that is that everybody who is not a Christian in this movie meets a horrible fate, and like it's presented as like they deserve everything that's coming to them. Like, Kevin Sorbo gets hit by a car and dies in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and the only way he's able to be okay is because the preacher was there right on time and he was able to convert him to Christianity right there, lying in the street as it rained.
It's revealed that after spoiler, God does exist, that Kevin Sorbo, he the real reason he hates God is because when he was a little kid he watched his mom die of cancer. So he's like, I've been shaking my fist at the heavens ever since I was a young lad. And then as he's trying to get back his Christian girlfriend, which I want to get back, which we have to address because there's a lot of funny ass scenes there.
Oh yeah.
But as he's trying to get back his Christian girlfriend, he gets hit by a car and he's dying. And instead of like really trying to do anything, like the minister's just like, hey man, are you religious? Do you believe, not even are you religious? Do you believe in Jesus? It's like, it's taking that on his deathbed to proselytize and tell him like, hey man, like, sure, you might have lived a shitty life, but accept Jesus right now, man. You're going to meet him pretty soon. That is like the coldest shit you can say to especially someone who's admittedly a non-believer. Oh, you're going to meet your fate soon, man. You're going to deal with the big man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like how it's like, listen, I can tell his lungs are filling up with blood. His ribs are cracked. You don't have a whole lot of time. You're going to drown in your own blood, but do you want to accept Christ right now or die a horrible, painful death and have nothing afterwards? Huh? Which one do you want, dude? Which one do you want, Kevin Sorbo?
Just stop me from gurgling on my own blood, please.
So there's a cast of other characters in this movie, as we briefly have mentioned so far, and they all reveal themselves, like in Magnolia style, to be interconnected. So one of them is Mina, Professor Radisson's younger Christian girlfriend, who By the way, it's revealed when the scene that happens where we're like, oh, this is how these two characters are connected. It's revealed that he started dating her like when she was a student still. And we have no idea how long they've been together for. All that we know is the mom is like, oh, there's no ring, so it's long enough for her to be like, oh, he should have tried to maybe ask me to marry him by now. And he's just like being horrible and shitty and berating her, and all of his other philosophy professor, liberal arts professor friends are being equally shitty to her face. But then she gets to have like arguments with her dipshit brother, who's a lawyer, who's like, I'm a horrible person. Why come I get all this
fucking
cool
rich
stuff?
And I don't care.
Yeah.
Played by 90s Superman.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this is the Avengers of Christian movies. You got Superman, fucking Hercules, Duck Dynasty, and the Newsboys. Man, that is some heavy hitters right there in the evangelical community.
I mean, the Newsboys. It's you either get Newsboys or Jars of Clay, and that really adds like the stamp of approval to your Christian movie, I think.
But I see. Here's the thing that like this is like the scope of this plot is like a Robert Altman movie. You know, like if Robert Altman were to far right evangelical politics, Robert Alt-right man. But but the thing I just don't get is like, so Kevin Sorbo, Professor Radisson is fucking college students. Well, that's the thing. I don't believe that they're fucking. And this guy's supposed to be like a handsome atheist professor. And, he's going to date this hot Christian girl. He's like, oh, I'm not I'm not going to have sex until marriage. It's like, really? I don't buy that.
Yeah. There's no way that she would date him.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to go to my next batch of younger female students and just get my dick sucked while quoting Socrates. That's what I'm going to do.
And then you have you have her brother, who's the atheist businessman, who also is dating a blogger who is just like, from the very jump, the first time we meet her, it's like, she's the ultimate liberal. She's got a meat is murder bumper sticker. She's got a humanism bumper sticker. They probably would have put a coexist bumper sticker on her car, but they couldn't license the rights to have the bumper sticker show up in there.
Well, I mean, they don't want people to coexist. It's Jesus or nothing,
Exactly, right. And so she goes, and she's, the first conversation we hear her have is with Dean Cain, who's like, I need directions because somebody broke into my car and stole my GPS, which, by the way, if you have a GPS in 2012, like, get your fucking life together. It should have been stolen out of your car.
And she has an iPhone.
Yeah.
It has maps on there.
Oh, my God. So she goes in, and she's like, I have an ambush interview with the Duck Dynasty guy, so I'm going to need you to give me directions so I can go and jump this man and try and get him to admit that God's not real or whatever the fuck.
After church.
Right. And she shows up and she's just like, I'm a blogger for the New Left. Isn't it crazy that you murder animals and then eat them? That's cruel.
And he's like, I'm a good businessman. I take pride in Jesus has blessed me, and we believe in God no matter what. And then she's like, oh, you fucking Christian, you're so gross. Ugh.
Yeah, she talks to his wife and is like, hey, how come you're not barefoot and pregnant in the fucking swamp? And she's like, because we have money? Because we don't have to do that anymore?
Because we were born into money because our dad was really rich. He started this big hunting and game trade.
And that's the thing. It's like, it takes the standpoint from this moment on with the characters where it's like I said, anybody who's not a Christian is a horrible, horrible human being. And then we see the next extension of that in this character tree with Aisha, the Muslim student who is hanging out with her dad. She lives with her dad, who's a very devout Muslim. She wears a headscarf around him. Incorrectly, by the way. Yeah. Does not wear it correctly.
She was not wearing the niqab correctly. But I bet they probably just during set and production, they're like, yeah, just put on this fucking burqa.
Right. That's the thing. And that's, if she was really like so devout where her dad was like making her fully cover up, she would not be allowed to leave the house with exposed arms the way she did.
Yeah, and oh man, her character development is the worst, man. Like, I felt so bad for the very lovely actress that played her. I'm sure, everyone's going to break into Hollywood somehow, but this is not the way. But so like this is where we kind of have this intersection of characters where when Josh is like he's venting to his girlfriend how frustrating this debate's going to be. Like the Aisha works in the kitchen and he says something like, "Oh, Jesus is my God," or whatever he says, and she's like, "Oh, I haven't heard of this Jesus fella," even though like Jesus is in the Quran. Like she knows who Jesus is,
right?
But then so she goes home. And instead of listening to music, she just puts on a Franklin Graham sermon. Which, by the way, Franklin Graham is the son of a former televangelist, Billy Graham.
Right.
But Franklin Graham was actually in the news recently because he said that the Republicans who voted for Donald Trump's impeachment they're like Judas in the house, and so. If there's any doubt of what the political leanings of this movie are, like that is it. Like these are who they're making the movies for. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you made like a Venn diagram of like people who saw God's Not Dead and people who stormed the Capitol. The middle would be a pretty large circle. There'd be a lot of intersection.
I feel like a lot of the people on trial, like if they they're all getting labeled as domestic terrorists now, and that means by extension that like how Osama bin Laden had whatever movies in his terrorist cave, is all of these terrorists now are having the whole God's Not Dead trilogy just on DVD ready to be watched on repeat in their caves. Because this movie is just the only reverberations of an echo chamber. That's all the sound of this movie is. It's that Christians are a minority who are being persecuted constantly. Anybody who is on the left or smart is trying to ruin Christianity and make sure that it doesn't exist in America anymore. And guess what? Muslims are also like that, even though they mostly believe in a lot of the same stuff that we talk about in our book, but they just have like some different parts. But don't look too much into that. Don't look too deeply into that.
Yeah, there is actually, because the Muslim dad, beats his daughter after he catches her listening to the sermon. Well, her brother,
right? Her brother rats her out, little snitch.
Yeah, for reading about Esau in the Quran, but there's a moment. There's like a moment of real sincerity when the girl goes back into the car, she's being picked up by her dad, and her dad says, "Hey, I know you want to participate in this world, but they've got the understanding of God incorrectly. Like I do this because I believe in our faith, and I'm not trying to be religiously intolerant. All this stuff." And there's actually something like where he's like being wholesome, saying, "No, I really believe this. I think this is the way." And like while he's showing that sort of like wholeheartedness, like the Christians are painting him as religiously intolerant, and it's like no, like he was the only character. I mean, like he's completely, all that's negated when he beats her, but like that was the only moment you saw some actual nuance and like dimensionalization of a character.
Right. It's like the only time that somebody gets shaded with a brush that shows, okay, maybe they have the right and are allowed to believe what they believe, and they don't have to be questioned for it. And I was hoping that maybe that would be a plot line that would be explored. Like there's a lot of elements of this movie that I would change. Like some of them are for the sake of comedy. Like I would change whenever they have at the Newsboys concert at the very end of the movie, after Professor Jeffrey Radisson gets hit by a car. So they have this clip of Willie Robertson come on at the movies, and he goes, "Hey, I heard there's a guy who said Professor around there is making y'all say God is dead." And I would have changed that to immediately, because he just got hit by the car. He would have, Willie Robertson should know preternaturally and be like, "Well, that motherfucker just got hit by a car. I sent a man after him in the streets. Don't fuck with Duck Commander." I would have loved to have seen something like that, right? I would have loved to have seen a sequence of this movie that didn't involve the weird blogger lady at all. Her character was so stupid. They were trying really, really hard to print her up as being like this is what the media is. The media is so important, and they're going to try and force these anti-Christian ideals down your throat otherwise.
I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, Donald Trump got elected because I mean, all these things were like
Right.
brewing before, and the thing is, so you know, she gets cancer because
Yes.
she doesn't believe in Christ, and there, you know, it's a whole trilogy, and so she comes back, she's in remission and stuff. But here's the thing, and she's now a Christian, so she's not a new left blogger anymore. But the thing I don't get is, let's say she does accept Christ.
Mhm.
Like, so suddenly she's just gonna like give up vegetarianism. She's gonna like just like give up all her politics. Like, it just goes to show that you're not a real Christian if you vote Democrat. You know, fucking
Right.
baby killers.
It's so insane to me that this movie does not even allow, but it's not that insane, like knowing the obvious politics of the people who make movies like this. But to not allow there to be any sort of people of faith on the opposite side of the political spectrum is absolutely fucking insane to me. Like, the fact that the only way for her to, you know, she goes to this doctor, and the doctor's like, listen, you have cancer. And there's a part where it's off screen, clearly ADR'd, where he's like, I know you're really important and the world is not going to go on without you. Because they're trying to make her little weird left blog be an important part of the media landscape, clearly. But that's the thing. It's like, none of these people are as important as anybody thinks that they are. It's all just everybody getting demonized who doesn't believe the exact same thing that you believe. And if you don't, and if they don't believe it, then they must be the sinners. They must be the enemies. We must destroy them. We must smite them. And we're going to do that with this kick-ass movie with Kevin Sorbo as an atheist getting owned by a child.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise he lost. I mean, Hercules can even beat Xena. You know, there's no reason to beat God.
Yeah,
but,
of course not.
But the other thing too that that I don't think you know this, but I was doing some more research, and apparently this movie was #1 in Brazil when it came out.
Really?
And these evangelical Christians, I mean, they've been doing numbers. They've been putting up numbers in Latin America because, like, they take these movies, they dub them in Spanish, and whenever someone does a missionary trip, and you know, they get all the poor Mexicans, all the poor Brazilians in villages, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to see a fancy Hollywood movie about Jesus?" And they fucking sell out like I mean, like I you know, you said you grew up in a religious household. Did you ever read Chick Tracts?
I've read some Chick Tracts before. Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from English, the most produced and distributed Chick Tracts are in Spanish because they send those all over Latin America.
Yeah.
So like,
right
so I like that. I gotta give the people at PureFlix like credit for adopting the Hollywood model and understanding the importance of international markets, especially in this day and age. I'm like, hey, you know, they're taking Hollywood's decadent model and using it to proselytize and evangelize. So, you know, like money. I mean, money's good. There's money in Christ is good. That's all I can say. Like,
well, religion's a big business, dude. Christianity's a huge business. Why else does Daystar exist and the 700 Club exists? Because there's fucking money in selling religion to people. And especially if you're selling religion to those people and saying, oh, well, you're nobody's going to like you if you believe this thing. So you better believe it. And that way you'll have this community of other people who like you and love you. Don't worry about what the other people think. But also worry about what they think and hate everything that they stand for.
And it goes the same with, you know, we're in the comedy business. You can you look at some of the highest paid comedians. They're doing the Christian circuit, going to mega churches and doing the yucks about God and stuff.
Yeah, man, dude. I mean, I grew up outside of Dallas, Fort Worth, and there was nothing but mega churches out there, right? Like Daystar's international headquarters is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's a megachurch basically like a stone's throw away from each other. You can hit a megachurch with another Bible from the last megachurch you threw it at. And all of those people still get together and hopefully don't go see movies like this. Not all of them. Like I'm reading on Wikipedia here, there's some evangelists who like Michael Gerson, who say the main problem with God's Not Dead is not its cosmology or ethics, but its anthropology. It assumes that human beings are made out of cardboard, that academics are arrogant and cruel, liberal bloggers are preening and snarky, unbelievers disbelieve because of personal demons, and its characterization by caricature. Everybody in this movie deserves to be characterized better. And I think that spreading out all of the plot lines doesn't help the actual filmmaking of it.
Yeah, and the thing is, there is a way to make a good Christian movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, I grew up Catholic, so Passion of the Christ I saw, and that was a good one where there was like a real like again, there was character development, there was pain, and you were like, oh, okay, yeah, like, you know, let's overlook the anti-Semitism, because that's also big in Christianity. But another one of my favorite Christian movies is Last Temptation of Christ. And the one thing I think this movie, when we talk about characterizations and everyone being two-dimensional or one-dimensional, just no dimensions really, that like even in Last Temptation of Christ, Jesus has doubts about his faith. So like what would have made this movie more believable is, let's say like Radisson really does have this guy on the ropes, and there is a moment where he has like the God, why have you forsaken me moment, and there's a real doubt, and then like something real motivates him to like, no, God is really real, instead of this half-ass like, oh no, the Bible says it, therefore it's true. It's like that, you know, that would have like, I would have rooted for Josh if that were the case. But This is just like, no, I'm right no matter what. I'm going to just, even when I can't disprove the scientific arguments, I'm just going to call Stephen Hawking a grumpy, bitter cripple, and you know, and say this guy's a fucking annoying, angry atheist who's only mad at God because he hasn't had life the way he's wanted it. Like that's just lame, for lack of a better word. It's just lame.
It is. It's lame, and more so it's lazy. Because it's not even allowing your audience the dignity of experiencing something that isn't just ham-fisted and the easiest like beating over the head with a frying pan dunk of all time. Like assume that your audience is smart enough, even if they don't agree with what the character believes. Assume that they're smart enough to think, oh man, well maybe he might not get out of this one. Maybe now that Professor Radisson is quoting Job and other Bible verses right back at Josh, maybe he's got a little bit more knowledge of the Bible than he thinks. Maybe he has an understanding. What's he going to do? But then it just all gets diluted with all these other plot lines, no character depth at all, and a lot of straw man bullshit.
Yeah, and again, it assumes that like again, like it's really preaching to the choir, you know, no pun intended. Where it's like, again, I don't know if there is a God. I mean, personally, I don't think so. But you know, if I'm wrong, I'm like, well, I wasted, you know, however many years. I'm fucked for eternity. But like again, like he accuses, you know, Radisson of using circular logic with the Big Bang Theory, like, oh, because it existed, you know, like he says, you know, Stephen Hawking says that because there are laws like gravity, therefore it's necessary that they exist. It's like, oh, that's circular logic, but God exists because he exists, and it's like, well, that's circular logic as well. Like we don't know the origins of the universe. That's just kind of the fault of humanity. We're not smart enough, and we probably will never really figure it out. Or, you know, at least we're closer to a science. But it knows who it's preaching to. It's nothing but red meat. You know, it's like, here, you know, you want this. You like the people seeing this movie already have those convictions. You like, again, you're not. It's intellectual dishonesty in the highest degree, and that's what makes it a bad propaganda film.
Right.
Like, because a propaganda film, like, you're not. The thing is, people. It's not supposed to be intellectual. It's supposed to be appeal to the pathos.
Exactly. Like, when you hear a man yelling, religion is a mind virus, of course it's going to stoke some hackles up in you and make you be like, oh, fuck that guy. But that doesn't actually mean anything.
Exactly. And to quote Joseph Goebbels, he actually said this about Battleship Potemkin when he saw it. He said, if the people watching that could have no idea of what communism is, but after seeing that movie and how it appeals to like the sense of emotions and everything, they would be a full-fledged Bolshevik. And that's the idea, you know, like you're supposed to show the suffering of Christ and like show, hey, this guy really loves you. He died. And that's why like Last Temptation and Passion of the Christ work. And this one doesn't, you know?
Right. Well, that's why the Bible works, because the Bible, you know, is pretty decent storytelling for the most part. Like there's some stuff that's really I don't know, real weird and clearly stuff that people who are actually very religious and Christian gloss over all the time and use selectively. But it's enduring, and because there's stories in there and fleshed out characters and people who change and grow instead of bullshit like this. Like, if the Bible was written like God's Not Dead, if God's Not Dead became a new book of the Bible, there would be so many less Christians, I think.
It would just be Scientology.
Yeah, exactly. God. I have a final question for you, I think. When we before we started recording, and sort of at the beginning of it too, you mentioned that you don't like this movie sort of changes for you depending on your mood. Like, sometimes you really hate this movie, but there are times when you love it. You called it the room of Christian cinema, and I want to know the elements of this movie that you find on a good day entertaining and worth the effort of watching this movie over and over again.
Right, the days that I love it, and I think this is more in a pre-Trump, theocracy that I really like. It's the campiness, it's the strong men, it's just so over the top, and it's the laziest arguments. I'm sure you like. There's that copy pasta that went around that there's like a former Marine, went to his atheist professor and disproved evolution by saying like, "Oh, this rock is 2 million years old. How come it hasn't evolved?" And he's like,
Right.
"Oh," and that man was Albert Einstein, or
Right.
like. And so it's essentially that the movie. So like I said, in this day and age, it's everything's ironic, everything is tongue in cheek, and so to see people having full, unwavering, unshakable convictions is refreshing, as naive and as campy as it may be. And again, you just don't you don't see movies like that much anymore. Like true camp is dead, in my opinion. But with that said, the reason I hate this movie is because you see how these people are mobilized,
Right.
and you see insurgents. You see an insurrection. And, people actually bomb abortion clinics, and then people actually go out and beat Muslims and Jews and all this stuff. And you're like, yeah, and this is what's mobilizing them. This is one of the texts that they have in their little DVD shelf next to their loaded AR-15,
Right. Yeah. This is right there next to their hollowed out Bible full of shotgun shells and holy water to baptize the people they murder with their bacon grease covered bullets.
You'll be cleansed with both the blood of Christ and your own blood,
Exactly. Just like Kevin Sorbo at the end of this movie after he gets hit by a car driven by God himself.
Kevin Sorbo, after they banned Trump on Twitter, he lost a lot of followers. So again, like there's more. I'm sure a lot of the God's Not fans people are on Parler right now. As long as Parler's
it's
going to be
still
around.
alive. Yeah. Who knows by the time this episode comes out if it'll actually still be up and running.
It'll be on Gab next.
Yeah. That's the thing is like there are parts of this movie that are they're so earnest in a way that feels like it is being ironic almost. Like it circles around. It hits the horseshoe part. Like the part where at the very end of his arguments, when Josh is like, it's up to them. And then the Chinese immigrant kid stands up and goes, God's not dead. And then all the other kids start standing up and going, God's not dead. And then you oh, Captain, my Captain, Kevin Sorbo. And he storms out super upset.
A God's Not Dead's Poet Society.
Oh, and by the way, we have to briefly touch on this poor Chinese immigrant kid who's like, his sole purpose in the movie is for the right who watches this movie to be like, oh, China's bad. They hate God over there, because the kid talks to his dad and he's like, you never know who could be listening. Don't talk about God. You're going to jeopardize your brother's chances of going over to the U.S. Bye.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that. Like his dad says that while wearing like a fucking Giorgio Armani suit, driving like a $300,000 like luxury car, speaking on the phone. It's like, oh yeah, like what has God given us? Look what communism is. It's given me everything. It's and again, don't get me wrong, like the nouveau riche in China, you know, they live well. It's like contradictory messages about the Chinese government. It's like they're communists, want to take everything away. But by the way, this godless Chinese person is like really rich.
Yeah, let's not worry about what Jack Ma's up to. Let's worry about if God is allowed to exist in China.
Remember that lady that was letting Christians pray? Whatever happened to her?
Well, Greg, I really expected to like fully dislike this movie. And I watched it and I was surprisingly entertained, even though it is extremely bad. So in a roundabout way, thank you for making me watch God's Not Dead. And thank you for cementing my further disbelief in Christianity and in this bullshit doctrine instead of just letting people live as they are.
No, it's my honor. I'm spreading the word of God, but not the way they want. And,
exactly.
And if you want more recommendations on bad Christian movies, may I recommend Like a Thief in the Night and Left Behind, a good series to start with.
Oh yeah, it's they got Nicolas Cage for the first Left Behind movie, right?
No, that was the reboot. The original one had Kirk Cameron.
Oh God, good old Kirk Cameron. Well, I appreciate the recommendations. And Greg, where can the listeners find you on social media and stuff if they want to get more Christian movie recommendations from you?
You can find me on Greg Roque is Lame. That's my social media handle for everything. That's ROQUE, Greg Roque is Lame, at all social media.
And you can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for all of the other non-podcast related stuff. Subscribe to the Blockbusting Patreon if you want to get bonus episodes, including whenever we finally get somebody to run this. We'll figure it out. Me and Greg are going to do a bonus movie trivia episode, as he has so righteously challenged me to movie trivia, and we were going to do it today, but we couldn't knock it out. But we'll figure it out. So that'll be out there, along with other Blockbusting Film Club stuff. And yeah, that's about it. Greg, thanks again, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.